everybody, welcome to another episode of Throwback Thursday. Today we're going to be taking a look at something totally different. Now, for months, and actually going on 18 months now, like a year and a half, I've been wanting to do some other Throwback Thursday games that we haven't gotten to yet. And I kind of was waiting for the right time to do it. And one of the problems with that is when you're busy making 7 days a week of content, the right time sometimes never comes along for certain things. So I had a free day today. I'm sick of waiting, and I'm going to basically just do it. We're going to play Confrontation 3.5. So let's talk a little bit about 3rd edition Confrontation. This was the final iteration of Confrontation as I knew and played it. There is a 4th edition of Confrontation that was played with fully painted, pre-painted plastic vinyl miniatures, but I don't really consider that to be the same game, as it lost pretty much all of its artistic involvement of the players. And it didn't feel like the same game. It was no longer a skirmish level game. It was a company-sized battalion level game, and not really the spirit of what Confrontation had been for almost 10 years. So we're going to just sort of contain ourselves to the 3rd edition and prior of Confrontation in the Rackham universe. This is probably one of my all-time favorite skirmish games. You'd play typically around, well, the tournament style was, you would play 200-point games with 100-point sidebars that you could flip in depending upon what the scenario was, which is a handy way of doing things. It's a bit like the 2-list thing for Infinity. And all of your miniatures came packed with a card with all of their stats on them. So for instance, I'm going to play a 150-point game here just to demonstrate how the game works. And your average hero, for instance, could be anywhere between 100 and something and 50 points. This is Rackham the Duelist. This is a German card form, because one of the things when we were collecting these miniatures, they were actually fairly unavailable in North America. So a lot of my cards, you'll see this one's in English, but this one here is in French. This one here is in German. And that's just... That was you learned a lot of words that you didn't know before in other languages playing this game, as you had the reference cards typically, or at least terms, as you had the reference cards in different languages. But really, they didn't, as long as you knew what was what, it didn't really matter what language it was in, because it was just keywords and then the actual stat lines. So the numbers and the symbols aren't going to change at all. So the anatomy of the card is fairly simple. You can, when you buy models, have multiples in the same card. So for instance, I have 40 points of Reapers of Allahan here. There's 2 of them. They activate in the same card. And then two sword players as well. So this right here is 80, plus 40 is 120, plus 28 is 148 points. So roughly a 150-point list. There are upgrades and stuff you can attach to people. So there are like... artifact cards and stuff that heroes can buy, but I didn't bother with any of that stuff here. We're just going to keep it simple and sorty. And then on the other side here, I've got some big beaters. This is the Alchemists of Durs. Archeon Sanath is one of the great heroes. And then we've got a Tiger of Durs, which is one of the big beasties, and a Hybrid, which is one of the sort of like, I guess, they're not really drones, they're humans that have been augmented and modified. And these 2 factions will be what we're playing with today. So we have the Lions of Allahan, and the Lions of Allahan are kind of the good guys. There's also the Griffins of Alkalani, who are the sort of like more knightly, dour, serious humans. They're the ones with like the Templars and the crazy monks and priests and witch hunters and inquisitors and stuff. The Lions are sort of like the big free society. They're the America. They're the Captain America, red, white, and blue. The Signar and War Machine. The sort of like the big good guy sort of like faction. Although they do have some bad doers that work for them as well, and they're not necessarily always doing the right thing. They kind of have a how can I put it, a Brotherhood of the Wolf sort of vibe to them. So you can tell very much that things are inspired here by the Musketeers, by the sort of the Court of Louis XIII French, and then we've thrown a little bit of sort of fantasy stuff here with the sword players and stuff too. Rackham miniatures, what attracted us at the time with this game was the miniatures are gorgeous. They're a little bit dated now, a few of the sculpts, but for the most part, these guys set the standard for miniature sculpting for the next like 15 years. And they also did things with painting you'd never seen before. So all this like non-metal metal you see here on the cards, this is the first time anybody really ever seen that in miniature gaming. And we're talking about like 99, 2000, 2001 when this stuff was coming out. And it kind of blew everybody's minds. These are all painted by me. This is my collection of Alchemists and Lions. Well, part of it. There's a whole carrying case on the floor next to me right now that has stuff in it. And they were all built and painted probably 10 or 15 years ago when we were playing Confrontation. I was probably playing Confrontation like 4 or 5 times a week. Me and my buddy Nico, my buddy Christian, were playing it a ton. So this is a good little demonstrative force here. We've got 2 sort of like mid-level heroes. They're both in the 80s. We've got a big like wild beastie here, which is the tiger, and then a sort of like average sort of beater, like a slightly above average beater with the hybrid. Then we have the Reapers and the Swords, who are the sword players, who are sort of like some light fighters, some medium fighters, and then Rackham, who's again a medium class hero. So you can see numbers on one side and sort of like beef on the other as we play the game. So the game itself is relatively simple from its core mechanic. The fighting mechanic is probably the only thing that's going to like confuse you guys a little bit. But to actually like go through the stat lines is pretty simple. The first thing you should probably realize is that everything is in metric here. So this is all in centimeters. So this guy can walk 10 centimeters or run 20. Right here, this is his initiative, just like 40k. So initiative is how fast you're in combat. There can be bonuses and penalties to that in a fight. And then this right here is his melee attack and his strength. So he has a melee attack of 4, so he rolls a dice and adds that when he makes attacks. And then he has a strength of 3, which is what he'll add to the final total when he's hitting somebody. Then right here, and there's the damage system for this game is great too, so but we'll get there. This is his defense and courage. So when he's defending, he adds that first number, and then courage and his armor. And then when he's taking a hit, you subtract that basically from the strength of the opponent hitting you to see how much damage the guy does to you when you get hit. Then we have his shoot value. Now, not everybody has this stat, only if you're armed with a gun. And you can see here he has a percussion pistol, which is strength 6, range 10, 15, 20. And what that means is actually your range bands are your difficulty to hit. So there's a set difficulty to hit for each range band, and then you roll a die and add your shoot bonus here, which is your little arrowy thing. Then you have courage or fear. Now this guy's got a courage stat. The colors are basically reversed. It's purple with a gold pip. If it's fear, it's gold with a actually I can show you with a sort of purpley pip. So like he causes fear, the Tiger of Durs, so you can see it's purple there and it's a higher number instead of this. And again, when someone causes fear and attacks you, you could route, and what you do is you roll a die and add your courage to try and beat that. The fear target is basically a target number for people's courage tests. And then finally you have the authority down here. Most models, sorry, not authority, your discipline. Authority is a skill. Discipline is what you use for determining who goes first every turn. So for instance, your heroes, their discipline is usually pretty high, and that's what you dice off with to see who's going to pull a card first for activations. Now, Archeon Santh's got really good discipline. He's probably going to be generating the order for the turn most of the time. He's got a discipline of 7, which makes him super fast. Now, like I said, when you build a team, all you have to do is stay inside the same faction, and then heroes can get magic items and stuff too. But you're just restricted to however many guys came in the pack for each card. So it's usually 3 models per card maximum. So I've got 2 Reapers in this card, 2 sword players on this card, and then of course characters are always unique, and these guys are too many points to have more than 1 per card here. And that's really it for setting up a game. Now the game table itself, you can see here, it's a fairly strange size. It's in centimeters, so it's actually 60 by 120 centimeters, which conveniently is 4 by 2 feet. So I've put together a table here for a confrontation game, and we're going to play Bloodbath. So Bloodbath's a nice simple scenario. The deployment zones are a bit maybe strange for people who play other games than Confrontation. You actually deploy midway through the midfield, so you can't deploy within 10 centimeters of your home edge, which gives you a buffer for fleeing and stuff. And you can deploy anywhere in the 50 centimeter strip, so basically across here. It's almost to the middle, and the no man's land is 15 from the center. So there's a 1 foot gap basically between your forces at the beginning of the game, and you have roughly a, what would it be? 10 centimeters times 5. It'd be 20 inches of table, and then 4 inches at the back that you can't deploy into. Done in exactly the same way as the activation. And the cards are actually really important here. Because the first thing you do during a strategic phase, even during the approach, is you set the order that you want events to take place in, what order you want to activate your guys to. And that includes during deployment. So I would want to deploy Rackham last. I'd put him on the bottom of my deck. Probably the sword players first and the Reapers second. So I would deploy them like so. And likewise, I would probably want to deploy my hybrid first, my tiger second, and then Archeon last on this side. And then what we'll do is we'll make a discipline roll, a tactical roll, to see who's going first. So the black die will be the Durs, the white die will be the Lions. And what you do is you just dice off and add your discipline value. So 7 for Archeon and 4 for Rackham. Now, one thing in Confrontation, 1s are always a failure. So if I roll a 1 and my opponent doesn't, no matter what the total is, I've lost the roll. If I roll a 6 though, the dice roll explodes. Yes, exploding sixes. And what happens is you get to roll the die again. Now the risk is if you roll a 1 in the second dice roll, you fumble and you lose it. Otherwise, you can keep rolling sixes indefinitely to try and beat your opponent's roll. So one nice thing about this game, because there's exploding sixes in it and fumbles, is you're never out of the game. There's always a chance you can do something. Even if you're outclassed, so even if it's a stat advantage of 3 like Archeon has here, there's a chance Rackham can win. So let's see what happens. We dice off with the tactical roll, and we're going to get a 12 total for Archeon and an 8 for Rackham. So surprise, surprise, they get to go first. And what they'll probably do is when they win the tactical roll, they can force the Lions to deploy someone first. So now when you deploy, you flip a card, and you have a choice. Either put that card in reserve, or you can play it right away. Now the guy that won the tactical roll can have 2 cards in reserve, and they're basically cards that you can play instead of drawing a card. But you're always going to have the advantage if you win the tactical roll because you can put 2 into reserve. Now for this, we're not actually playing it, we're just deploying. We'll put down the 2 sword players, and they can be put anywhere inside the deployment zone. And we will pick this side over here for deployment. 2 sword players, we'll put 1 here. They can't be within 15 of the middle. Put another 1 over here, and they're ready to rock and roll. Flip over to the Durs now, and they'll deploy their hybrid. Again, he can't be within 15 centimeters of the middle, so roughly 6 inches to the center line. And he'll hang it over here by a tree. We flip the Reapers. They'll put themselves down. And whoops, they're on this side, so they're going to hang out. We'll give a Reaper to each one of the sword players with some backup, someone to shoot with as possible, but stay in cover. It's our 2 characters. We're going to have Rackham get put down. He'll hang it in the middle over here with everyone. And Archeon Sanath, and he's going to hang out with the Tiger. We're deployed. Let's talk about some core mechanics. Everybody can do long, basically complex skills or short skills during the course of an activation. So when someone's card gets flipped, after we make the tactical roll, we set our cards, we make the tactical roll, and we start drawing cards. You can do basically long skills or short skills. So long skills are things like running, you move twice your movement, can't make any shots. Charging, twice your movement into base contact, you get to fight afterwards. You can then focus, which will allow you to do things with magic, not relevant here. And then you can do other short skills, which can be combined, like walking, firing, making a melee attack, disengaging, or even walking after you kill someone with a melee attack. And they can be in any order. So we're basically set now to start playing the game. And what we'll do is we'll set our cards. I'm just going to set them in exactly the same pile as previous because it makes the most sense to keep your powerful pieces last, unless you think you're going to win the initiative roll. So, for instance, if we kind of like move up to each other and shift forward during the first part of the game, once somebody's in charge range during their activation, you're probably going to see the character pieces swap from the bottom of the pile to the top. Magic phase, we'll make our tactical roll to see who's going first. And they both explode, so on either side they've exploded now. It's probably worthwhile for both to roll again to see what they get, because Archeon probably doesn't want to risk Rackham going higher than him. So Archeon with the roll. He's going to get a 5 as his second dice roll, so he's got a total of 18. Let's see what Rackham gets. He's going to get a total of 9 plus 4 is 13. So a nice roll, but it's still going to be the Durs going first. We've got our hybrid here, and what we want to do is we want to activate this guy, but we're outnumbered right now. So we run the tactical roll. That means we can put a card in reserve, we put it beside our deck in reserve, and then we force the other player to go. Neither of us has card advantage right now, so we would then flip from, this side. He could also put his sword player in reserve. Sort of playing chicken basically and saying, well, I don't want this guy to go yet. Pull another card and say, well, I'll put my second card in reserve, and now it's back over to you, buddy. And you can't put any cards in reserve. So you know what your next card is. You know it's going to be the Reapers, or you can finally go and play your sword player. You go at the same time. And the plan, of course, here is to do something that baits out these big heavy hitters. So unfortunately, I don't have any measuring gauges in metric. I just realized I really should get one or have one made. But what we're going to do is we're going to run. So this one's going to run. He's going to spin. Facing is, of course, free during a run move. And he's going to run around and try and pull out the charge of this tiger. Even in front of the first sword player to try and accept that charge. Go into the actually activated deck. Goes back over. Now, he could choose the Durs player because he knows Archeon Sanath is this card to play him. Or he could go to his reserve deck and play one of the reserve cards. And he probably wants to play one of the reserve cards to try and get himself into a place where he's back to card advantage. So he'll play the hybrid. The hybrid's going to go, and he's going to try and make a charge. Now, he does have a gun. He has a neural crossbow, which is pretty good, so he could just sit back and shoot, or he could charge in and fight. And he's not a terrible fighter, and he has a skill called mutagenic, which also makes him badass in fighting. I realized I forgot to assign my mutagenic dice. Everybody in the Dur's army has the skill mutagen, and for every 100 points or part thereof, we're playing a 150-point game of game size, you get to assign mutagenic dice to people. And what they can do is they can use them to add to their stats during their activation. So it's most likely Archeon and the Tiger would have just kept those for themselves, as they have the most to benefit from having mutagen. Actually, never mind. You don't get that Tiger because you're not mutagenic. So it's going to be over there on the... he's made from mutagenics, but he's not actually mutagenic. So it's going to be on the hybrid and on the Man the Legend Archeon Sanath himself. That will get some mutagen. So what happens now is the hybrid can choose during his activation to roll a die, or roll that die, and add to it his mutagen level, and he's mutagen 0, and he can up his stats. Everything basically except for shoot. So he can up his every stat can be upped by 2 plus your mutagenic level, so he can basically upgrade all of his stats by 2. Let's roll and see what he gets. If he rolls a 1, of course he fails. He rolls a 4 though, which means he could add 2 to his fight stat and 2 to his strength and make himself 5-8 for this turn, which seems like a pretty good deal. So that's what we'll do is we'll make ourselves, 5-8. And then we will charge 20 centimeters. So checking range, he was well within range of that sword player, and we don't actually resolve the combat yet. You only do movement actions and shooting actions in magic during the activation step. Fray splitting in combat actually happens as its own separate phase. So with the hybrid having gone out of the reserve pool, he's now activated, and he'll go over here and go into the activated pile, and it goes back over to the lion player, who can now draw a card. Now he no longer has anyone in reserve, so he could choose to put this guy in reserve and wait it out, which he will do. That means that the Dur's player would put Archeon back into reserve, because he can have 2 models in reserve, and the Reapers will go and choose what they want to do this turn, and probably out of range to fire as well, because they only shoot 20 centimeters, which is about 8 inches. So they're going to have to run to become relevant later on, but they don't want to get charged either. So we'll activate both of them one at a time, and they will put themselves in a place where they can be useful next turn. So running up, moving to here. The second one, running up, and putting himself, I probably doesn't want to go there because the lion will charge him. He'll put himself over. Now activated, it's back over to the alchemists, and they can choose to either activate Archeon or activate the lion, so the Tiger of Dur's. And the Tiger's probably the better idea so far. Now, you can choose. You could hope that this fight goes well here when you charged, and then you got mutagenic dice that you can add to it later on. Or you can hope that you just gang up and murder the guy. So I think we're just going to gang up and murder the guy. And that's going to put the lion, the tiger rather, with lots of movement right there, fighting him as well. Means Ericon is going to activate. Now he has a move of 10. He could try and charge the tiger, but he's probably out of range. So instead he'll just walk 10 and hope to charge somebody next turn. And fight this little guy. And that's going to be the activation phase over. We're going to go to fray splitting in the combat phase. My favorite things about combats in this game is the way they handle one-on-ones and many-on-ones. So the Archeon Sanath versus the sword player is pretty simple. It's a one-on-one combat. Over here we have a many-on-one combat, and that's the way they go. It's a bit like Lord of the Rings, where you can never have multiple guys fighting multiple guys. You always have to divide it up. And the guy who wins the tactical role gets to choose how the dog pile gets divided. So it's really handy in this game when you've got multiple guys who've charged you to charge in extra guys so that they have to be split off. So for instance, if I was to charge Ericon into this tiger, what would happen is we would not then have the tiger be able to fight the sword player, because the sword player would have to fight this fellow right here, and he'd have to fight Ericon. So you can't intervene sometimes and make your guys not get ganged up on. The handy bit is, of course, that all your cards are flipped when combat actually starts. You have all your stats right in front of you. You're never looking for stats inside the unactivated pile. So because Ericon won the tactical roll, he's going to choose to go first. And use his mutagenic die to add to some stats. You can add up to 5 points to any given stat. And he rolls a 2, so he's got a grand total of 5 points to distribute. So he'll probably put 2 into his initiative to make sure he goes first. That's going to make him initiative 7. 2 into attack to make himself attack 8. And he's got 1 point left, he'll put it into strength. So now getting the charge off in confrontation is a big deal, because what happens is the guy who's being charged, if he suffers an
force, which is basically based on your base size, that's equal or more than his own force. So both these models are infantry models, they're force 1. Then he suffers a -1 to all of his aim, attack, defense, and initiative tests. And that's key right now because Archaon is going to be initiative 7 plus a d6 versus initiative. Normally 3 is going to go to 2 because he's been charged now. So let's roll and see who's going to win the initiative roll. Again, black will be the Durs, and it's an automatic fail for the Lion. He'll lose the initiative, and that means he has to declare his attack and defense dice first. So one-on-one combat, each side gets 2 dice. No matter what, they can sign however they want. The many-on-one combats are handled slightly differently, and it's to give the defender the possibility of basically surviving. So the sword player has 2 dice. He needs to assign them. He's not super excited about Archaon hitting him, but he does want to make it dangerous for Archaon to just do everything into attack. So he's going to decide that he's going to put 1 into attack and 1 into defense. Archaon's pretty heavily armored, and he decides that he's going to try and put a dice into attack and defense as well, just so he doesn't risk getting wounded early on. So he'll assign 1 and 1, make an attack dice. Now the sword player can choose to not use a defense dice and defend, but he knows there's only 1 attack coming his way. So both will roll die and add their stats. Now the sword player's defense is normally 3, but he's been charged, so it goes down to 2. Archaon's is 8 right now though, because he added to it with his mutagenic bonus. So the red will be Archaon, the white will be the sword player. Remember, 1's fail and 6's explode. And what's going to happen is Archaon's going to get a total of 11, and it's going to be a total of 7 for the sword player. So it's going to go through and actually hit him. Now, the difference doesn't matter for the strike. What matters now is the damage roll. Really interesting damage system. What happens is you roll a die. The low result is the location you hit. It's the lower of the 2 dice. So a 1 you hit the legs, a 2 you hit the arms, a 6 you hit the belly, a 3 you hit the belly, a 4 you hit the chest, and a 5, 6 you hit the head. So the higher each individual dice is, the better. The second die, the high die, you add to your strength and then reduce minus the resistance of the target. So for instance, the sword player, he's resistance 6. Archaon's strength right now is 8. He's gonna roll 2 die. And it's going to be double 4s. Now, it's interesting. That trumps everything because double 4s is a critical hit. Normally, if we were tracking this normally, it would be 4 is the location, so that would be the chest. And then 4 plus strength 8, 12, minus 6 is the result. So you go to the chest, and you count down to a result of 6, whoop, and it would be a critical wound. Now, conveniently, what's happened is we've rolled a double 4, and that trumps that, and that actually saves this guy a little bit because he would be critically wounded, he'd be red. But a double 4 is an automatic serious wound. So a bit of luck there for the sword player. But a further bit of bad luck, Archaon has a special rule, because he's got a thing called the sword axe. Whenever he rolls a critical wound, no matter what it is, even if it's a double 1, which is normally just you get away scot-free, you're killed outright. He snips your head off with his sword axe. So the dice result said it was critical. The actual critical result was a serious wound, and Archaon's special rule where he rolls doubles when he rolls to hit you is you're just straight up dead. Now Archaon has another really cool special rule called Brutal, which means that when he makes attack rolls in melee, his 5s explode like 6s, which is kind of super handy. But it doesn't matter. The sword player has literally had his head snipped off, like it was a tulip to gardening shears, and that means this defense dice becomes irrelevant, and Archaon Sanath has finished his activation. Go to the many-on-one. In a many-on-one, the many all just get 2 dice, just like in normal combat. They get 2 combat dice. So it'll be 2 and 2 on the tiger, and on this little fella, the hybrid. The defender gets 1 base die, plus 1 for everybody in melee with him. So he's going to have a grand total of 3 dice that he can assign to attack and defense. Now, the Tiger of Durs has a special rule called Brutish Charge. Turns where he charges, he gets an additional die, but he can only use that die if he makes a charge during the turn. He still gets it though, even if he's split off from the combat later on, just because he's caused a charge, he's basically got the momentum now for an extra dice. What you do is you make 1 test for the defender, and then you pick the highest initiative of the group, and then get to add +1 to it for each additional combatant. So the Tiger's got initiative 4, so we'll pick him over the hybrid, who's initiative 3. And that's going to mean that we get to roll 4 plus d6 plus 1 for the additional opponent. So 5 plus d6 versus the 3 for the sword player. But the sword player has been charged by a force of 1, 2, 3 because there's a cavalry guy in there too, a big monster. So you'll have a -1 yet again, which is taking him down to 2. And it's a grand total of 6 for the lion. 5 plus 5 is 10, and it means that they're going to get to go first. And that means the lion has to assign his dice before they do. So the sword player not super excited about the fight, and of course, having lost the initiative, he's going to put all of his... he's going to put 2 dice into defense and 1 into attack, just in case. Just in case something cool happens here. Now, it comes over to these guys. They get to assign their dice, and we've got a mutagen die still on the hybrid. So let's roll the mutagen die and add stuff to him. He gets a 6, so he's going to add 2 to his attack and 2 to his strength, and 2 to his resistance. Why not? Make himself a little more armory just in case he gets punched. And he'll assign 1 and 1 just to keep himself safe. Now, the tiger has a special skill called War Fury. And War Fury means that you get to, if you put all of your dice into attack, gain another bonus attack die. And that's what's going to happen here, is we're going to put an extra dice into attack, and the tiger's going to go all into attack. Tiger here is going to spend an attack die and take a swing against ye old sword player. So his attack is 5, and he gets to roll d6 and add 5. The defense right now on the sword player is 2 because he's been charged, and he will spend a defense die to try and parry it. So let's see what the attack total is first. It's going to be d6 plus 5, and it auto fails, but we still spend the defense die, and it goes away because you don't get to choose until after you roll. The announcement of the parry before the roll, it means that goes off. So then it's going to go over to Mr. Hybrid. The clone then picks his attack dice and chooses to swing on the sword player. The sword player uses his last defense dice to defend and hopefully survives the exchange. So rolling off yet again, we've got an attack right now of 5 on the hybrid because he used his mutagenic dice. And the sword player has a defense of 2. Let's see what happens. It's going to be a grand total of 6 to 7 as he just squeaks the blow through and hits him. So with a strength of 8, we'll roll right now to see the location and type of damage. So 2 is the low number, and that means he's going to hit him in the arm. So the sword player has been struck in the arm. And a strength right now of 8 plus his roll of 3 is 9. Minus the defense of 6 goes to 3. So 2, and then we count to 3. It's going to be a light wound. And that's what these are for. So you usually get these little cardboard chits in Confrontation. What I would do is I would glue them to additional artillery dice from Warhammer, so I could just track statuses on guys. So this is stunned, which just means -1 to all your tests. This is a light wound. This is a serious wound. And this is a critical wound. And so we're just going to be lightly wounded, whoop, like this, which is bad news. He survived the exchange, though. He is now able to strike back. With the hybrid out of attack dice, it makes sense that the 3 attack dice left hybrid is the target. All he has to do is roll to hit and not roll a 1. He's -1 to his test, but there is no defense dice here, so he will try and stab this tiger. If he can conceivably do it. Now, there are negatives to the roll, so if he rolled and had a sufficient wound, like if he was critically wounded at -3, and his stat was low enough, because his stat's only 2 right now, he could actually go to 0 and miss. But he gets a grand total of 6, goes to 5 because of his light wound, and he hits the Tiger of Durs. It's the little guy, and what happens is he gets to roll his 2 dice now to see what the damage is. It's going to be a location 2, which is the arm, and a total of 8. Minus the resistance of the tiger, which is 9, takes it to -1, and that means it's just a stun. Now at -1, however, which is nice, but this is still going to be bad. Because we've handed initiative back over, we've done what's called an exchange, which means we've gone all the way around once, and we're going to continue making exchanges now, but the only guy with dice left is the tiger, and he'll just make continuous exchanges on the defenseless, or defense dice-less sword player until he gets worn down. -1 to his rolls, though, not that that's going to matter. He rolls a 6 with his first one, which explodes, but he won't bother re-rolling and risking rolling the 1. He's strength 9. Oh, sorry. He's only resistance 8. It didn't matter. We're still stunned. He's strength 9, so let's roll to see what the damage is in the sword player. So it's going to be to the 4, which is the chest, and a grand total of 14 damage. And 14 minus 6 is 8. So to the chest, we count down to 8. That's going to be critically wounded, which is worse than his current condition. So his light wound will jump up to a critical wound. And what happens here is if you take lower wound levels, basically, if he was taking another light wound while he's critically injured, he would then go to dead. It's not as bad. You go up one condition level, and that will just kill you. His second attack misses. Oh, he might live. And his third attack hits. Okay, and he won't risk rolling it again. So no matter what I roll here, unless I roll double ones, and we don't, we roll location belly, and then 6 plus 9 is 14. 15. Yeah, 14 minus is going to be 8 again. That'll take us down to a critical, which bumps him up to a dead because he's already critically injured. In the combat, with all of the results done, the stun will stay on now until the end of the combat round, which is now finished, so it goes away too. And we're going to start a new turn. The sword players are gone, which means only 2 cards in the deck, but they will get a pass now for the Lions. The phase where you kind of want to flip your deck over. The hybrid's probably going to want to go last, and Archeon's going to want to go first. So shuffling or organizing up their deck, the Dirge player is done, removing the sword player card from their deck. The Lion player will then do much the same thing, although he will have the Reapers of Allahan go first. What about this poor little sword player's fear test too when he got charged by that lion? He might have actually routed, or sorry, tiger rather. The tiger's fear stat is actually 8, and I believe the courage stat on the little sword player is 5, so you need a 3+ to beat it. And he gets a 6, so he was fine. He also, because he has the bravery skill, he doesn't count 1s as automatic failures for fear tests, and he counts 5s as exploding 6s for rolling. All with the card piles made, let's see who's going first. +7 for Archeon, and +4 for Rackham. We're going to assign our mutagenic dice again. It'll be 1 and 1. There's only 2 guys here on the field, and we still have 150 points of army on the table. And not shabby. It's a 9 to 10, so just squeaking by and getting to go first. For the Dirge. And this is the turn where he does want to go first, and he's going to assault Rackham the Duelist. Now it's during his activation, so he's going to make a mutagenic roll. He's mutagenic 3. Oh, and he rolls a 1. Oh, losing his mutagenic bonus, he's still going to make that charge. Whoop, and pile into old Rackham the Duelist. Flipping now, it will be the Reapers of Allahan getting to go next. And they have a choice. They either hope that old Rackham here can deal with Archeon, and not charge the other guys, or they can charge in and hopefully beat down the rest of these fellas. So, putting their big boy boots on, they're going to go, and they're going to make a charge and try and fight this tiger. Now, they have to make fear tests to charge him. So the first one, he's got bravery, so 1 doesn't fail, but he needs a 3+. He's going to get it with a 6, and he'll charge the tiger. Bloop. The second one on a 3+, try and charge it. He does. So in he goes, and they will both charge this fella. In charge, he's pretty much stuck where he is, and he's happy to be fighting. And then finally, we've got the hybrid. He will charge in, countercharge into this Reaper, and divide up the fight. He assigned 2 points. He'll put them into initiative and try and go first. Charged, and he's happy to stay where he is. Having won the tactical roll, Archeon decides to get right down to business. And he's going to try and start this fight. He's got no bonuses, though. He's only initiative 5. He did, however, charge Rackham, which will drop his initiative down to 5 as well. But that makes it a straight dice roll to see who's going first. And it's going to be Rackham. Going second, Archeon says play it safe and put 1 into attack and 1 into defense. With that being the case, Rackham does much the same thing, and this will probably be a protracted combat. So Rackham's going to get to go first. He's got no real attack bonuses, but he is attack 5, which is pretty nice. Archeon chooses to place his dice in defense, and we'll see what the results are. So it's going to be 5 plus a 6, which explodes, which is a pretty good roll. He will choose to roll it again and risk the 1. It's going to be a 2, which is 8, plus 5 is 13. Archeon can try to defend against it. He's got a defense of 6, which means he will need this dice to explode, which it does not. 7, he'll roll for location and damage right now. And get a double 1! Oh no! Double 1 means critical nothing, basically. Not even a stun. And then defending, his attack is 6. Rolling his die. He gets a 2 for an 8. Rackham's defense is 4. He just needs a 4+ to parry it. And he only gets a 1, though, so it goes through. Archeon has his strength of 7 versus resistance of 5. Let's see where it hits. It's going to hit to the 3, which is the belly, with a total of 6, which does not explode on this dice roll. And that's going to give him a 14 minus 5 is 9 to the belly. Oh, that's bad. It's critically wounded. Blew with that double 1. So that combat's now finished. It's just more one-on-ones here. So we've got Mr. Hybrid He's got his 1 mutagenic dice, which he put into a point of initiative, and he'll put both his dice. Well, he has to roll for initiative right now. Not putting any dice anywhere. Let's see who's going first. With the Reaper being charged, this is going to be a total of 7 for the hybrid. The Reaper is 4 minus 1 because he was charged for 3, but that's an 8, which means he does win the initiative roll, and the hybrid has to place his dice first. The hybrid goes 1 and 1 to try and make it a protracted combat. And the Reaper of Alahan, getting to go first though, he is attack value 4 with his sword. Gets a 6 though, which explodes. Oh, and then fails on the second roll and doesn't hit at all, but that does burn the defense dice off him, as he would have always, of course, chosen to parry. And then likewise, back in, attack dice from the hybrid becomes a 5, which is a total of 8. Trying to defend that. 2 plus 2 is 4, and that'll miss, which means a strike goes through on that poor Reaper. Oh, and that's a bad one. Low dice is going to be to the head. Total of 12 minus the resistance of 3 is a 9 to the head, and he literally just takes that guy's head right off. By force enough, I think he's forced 2 to actually suffer a penalty. So his initiative is going to go down to 3 versus the initiative of 4 for the Reaper. He gets to go first though, 8 to 6. Deciding to go 1 and 1 and play it safe, while the Tiger, not charging this turn, decides to War Fury and put them all into attack. Attack on the Tiger is 5, but he was charged, so down to 4. And he gets a 6. Oh, this is going to be bad. And he gets a 6. 2. So it's going to be 12, 14, plus 4 is 18 total. Defense 2 on the Reaper. He's got to roll 3 consecutive 6s to try and parry it. No. So he gets hit. See the location of the damage? That's going to be to the chest. 15 minus resistance 3, 12 to the chest. He just eats that guy. We'll end that combat. Oh man, things are looking bad for the Lions. Go roll. Let's see who's going first. The piles are made, and it's going to still be Archeon. So he'll pull a card first. It's him. Hey, surprise. And he'll stay where he is. But at this point, gaining tons of dice from people trying to dogpile him is probably a better idea. Is in. Now we have to make a courage test for poor old Archeon, or for old Arakan. He's courage 6 though against a fear of 8, and he's fine. Whoop. And then last but not least, there's no cards left on the Lion side. The hybrid goes, and he charges in as well. And it's going to be a 6 for him. So 2 into initiative, 2 into attack, and 2 into strength. And then 5 for Archeon. He'll put everything into attack and strength. He can put 3 into attack and 2 into strength. Initiative 5 or 5, doesn't really matter here. 6, 7 to initiative 6, but goes down to 5 because he was charged for Arakan. It's going to be the Durs going first. 3 to his initiative test because he's critically injured. He's got 1 die plus 1 for each additional guy in base to base. That's going to be 4 dice total. Whoop. And he will put all but 1 into defense. So 1 into attack, 3 into defense. Tiger with his bestial charge will get his 1 die plus 1 for the guy in base to base. Bestial charge, and he'll War Fury and just put them all into attack as he usually does. And then Archeon will put 2 into attack. Yeah, 2 into attack, why not? This is the end game anyway. And then 2 in attack for the hybrid as well. First, it makes sense for Archeon to try and do the finishing blow. He'll take 1 of his attack dice, throw a defense dice down. The defender can just use any number of defense dice. He's actually going to put 2 defense dice down against Archeon's strike here. Attack 9 right now. He's going to roll a die and add 9. 13 is the number to beat. For poor old Arakan. He can roll 2 dice to try and beat it though, because he did spend 2 defense dice on it. And he picks the highest of them. He's defense effectively 1 right now, because he's 4 normally, but he's critically injured. He needed a 6, he didn't get one. And that means he's going to get hit. Hits. He's going to get hit in the chest with a 14. Minus 5 is 9 to the chest. Critically injured. He's already critically injured, and that will kill Arakan. More than normal game, of course. We'd be playing 300 points normally. The field is held, therefore, by the Durs. What you would do at the end of the 6th turn is take the point values left on the table with certain penalties for injury. So you're minus 5 points if you're seriously injured and minus 10 points if you're critically injured. And the guy with the most points left on the table will be the one that wins. So Bloodbath is all about killing people. In this case, the Durs did it very well.
And there you go, a quick intro to the Wargaming classic that is Confrontation 3.5. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I would love to play more of it. I do know there are local Confrontation players that still have their miniatures, and if they'd like to come in and play some games, just let me know. I'm more than happy to throw down anytime. So hopefully you will see more of this on Throwback Thursday. I have lit the match, and hopefully there will catch a fire. I do have a lot more factions. I have Wolfen. I have... what are they called? The Keltois. I have Lions. I have Durs. I have Orcs. I have Ninja Goblins. I have a lot of Confrontation miniatures I still need to paint. And one of my favorite all-time games. So having an excuse to paint something would be a lot of fun. So anyway, I hope we'll see you for more of this on Throwback Thursday. Until then, I'm Ash. Happy Wargaming.